Hello everyone, you're on VM24.com channel and today we'll be taking apart Samsung Galaxy A25. First of all, we need to remove the SIM card tray. For this we use a special eject tool and carefully push the tray out. If it doesn't come out easily, we can additionally use tweezers. Next, we need to heat the surface of the back cover to a temperature of approximately 70 degrees Celsius or 160 degrees Fahrenheit. For this we use a heating pad, but you can also use a hair dryer. And after 5 to 10 minutes, we can move on to detaching the back cover. To do this, we use a thin plastic film, inserted into the gap between the back cover and the mid-frame, and carefully slide it along the edge, cutting through the adhesive layer. As always, we need to be careful around the side buttons, since flex cables may be located in these areas. By the way, since the camera cover is separate from the back cover, we don't need to worry about the lenses. So we carefully go around the edge, cutting through the adhesive. At some point we can try to separate the back cover. We lift it up and take a look on the mid-frame. In many places there are antenna traces. Please note that on this model compared to the same A50, the antenna traces are much stronger and better protected. However, this doesn't mean we should be less careful or that they cannot be damaged. After that, we need to remove the camera cover, since there are screws underneath it. Carefully detach the camera cover and set it aside. Then, using a non-metallic tool, we can disconnect the fingerprint sensor connector, which is located on the mid-frame. Now we can move on to removing the screws. For this we use a 1.5mm Phillips screwdriver or a Phillips #30. It is also better to cover the camera lenses. For this we use a special protective film. Please note that we don't stick the film directly onto the lenses themselves, but onto the rim around them. So we continue removing the screws using the same screwdriver. It looks like all the screws are the same. However, it sometimes happens that screws don't thread well when put back into the round holes, so it is better to remember their positions to make reassembly easier. We remove the screws in the lower part. It is better to keep the screws from the bottom section separate from the previous ones. After that, we move on to removing the mid-frame. For this we use a thin plastic film, carefully release several clips, and then switch to a thicker tool. Why do we use a thin plastic film? We insert it into the gap between the display frame and the mid-frame in the area of the SIM tray. There the plastic is very thin. If we use a thicker tool, we can very easily damage the plastic in that area. So we carefully go around the edge and detach the mid-frame. As usual, the mid-frame is held quite firmly along the edges. Of course, we need to be careful around the side buttons, since they are physically located there. And of course, the fingerprint sensor is also located on the mid-frame. Now we can carefully remove the mid-frame. Please note that the loudspeaker is located on the mid-frame in the lower part. Next, using a non-metallic tool, we need to disconnect the battery connector. After that, we can disconnect the rear camera. It is the only one that disconnects from this side. Then we can disconnect the connectors on the motherboard and the subboard and remove the interconnect flex cable. The arrow on the interconnect flex cable indicates the direction toward the main board. We can also peel up and disconnect the connector that goes to the display. Now we can disconnect the two connectors of the coaxial cables and free the cables themselves, which are held in place by clips on the subboard. We also need to remove one screw that holds the subboard in place. For this we use a Phillips #30 screwdriver. Please note that this screw is different from the previous ones. And we remove the subboard. It comes out easily. On the subboard there is the charging port, the headphone jack port, the microphone on the opposite side and the other components. And now traditional quick test of the microphone opening. The microphone hole is not located in the display frame, it is located in the mid-frame. It has a protective L-shaped channel. The microphone body itself is located on the subboard on the opposite side of the microphone hole. If we insert something into the hole, we won't be able to damage the microphone this way. Also note that the L-shaped channel is protected by a gasket on the opposite side. The vibration motor remains in the display frame. Now we move on to the top section. We disconnect the two connectors of the two coaxial cables and bend them aside so they don't get in the way. We can disconnect the front camera. It is also better to cover the front camera lens with a protective film so that debris or dust doesn't get on it. After that we also need to remove one screw that secures the main board. For this we use the same Phillips #30 screwdriver. This screw is different, so it is better to keep it separate from the previous ones. Now we can remove the motherboard. Carefully pry it up and remove the printed circuit board. Then we flip it over and disconnect the rear cameras. Carefully disconnect the rear cameras and then set them aside. As for the microphone opening in the upper part, it is the same situation. It is located in the mid-frame and has an L-shaped channel. On the opposite side there is a protective gasket. The microphone body is located on the main board on the opposite side of the microphone hole. If we insert something into the microphone hole, we won't be able to damage the microphone this way. So that concludes our assembly. Thank you for watching and see you in our new videos, either on our Telegram channel or on our website. Okay guys, now we're done. Thank you for watching. If you like what we do, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel or read our articles on our website. Take care of yourself and until next video.